So I think the short version is the law automatically, sort of in a self-executing manner, provided regulatory relief for small and tiny banks, and that's good. But it also contemplated regulatory relief for medium-sized and larger regional banks, for instance, and we have yet to see that implemented. So one of the topics that I'm certainly going to want to discuss at the hearing today is what kind of progress are the regulators making with those sort of medium-sized banks, $100 to $250 billion in assets, those above $250 billion, because, you know, under current policy and under Dodd-Frank, any bank over $50 billion was treated exactly the same. This huge onerous regulatory overlay, whether you're $51 billion and you are, you know, a regional bank somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, or if Citigroup. And clearly those are two very different animals. So we're looking to see some differentiation in how they're regulated.
Go ahead. Senator, my name is Richard Fisher. I was head of the Federal Reserve back in Dallas for 10 years until 2015. And this was something that we really pressed hard for, getting that lifted up at least to $250 billion or so. These regional banks, particularly the little community banks you mentioned, really have struggled with overburdened regulatory excess. You're going to have Randy Quarles testify today, the Vice Chairman of Supervision and Regulation. Are you meeting any resistance at all from the Fed, or is the Fed helping you with this cause?
I wouldn't describe it as resistance, but I'm eagerly awaiting some of the results. I would argue that there were some things the Fed could have done already for some of these banks that are, they're not tiny banks, but they're not extremely complex international banks either. So this bill that we passed earlier this year, 2155, requires the regulators to provide this tailoring, customizing the regulation to reflect the activities. I'm going to push them to see where we are, because it's, you know, I think it's overdue.
Good. I'm all behind you, but I'm not there anymore.
Give them a call.
Okay. I think we can just broaden it to talk about the new USMCA. I don't know. There's no short. Can we just keep calling it? Can we call it new NAFTA?
Yeah.
There's good things and bad things in your view?
Well, that's exactly right. I think there are good and there are bad things. Look, the good thing is relief that we're not going to descend into a full-blown trade war with our nearest neighbors and biggest trading partners. That's certainly good. And there are some specific titles that are encouraging to me. You know, new titles on digital technology, financial services, intellectual property. These are all constructive. But I think the biggest changes are actually changes that diminish the free trade that NAFTA has permitted. I don't like the sunset provision that is in this. I don't like the dramatic reduction in the access to an investor-state dispute settlement mechanism. I don't like the government mandating wage rates and putting quotas on imported vehicles. So it seems to me it's a modest step backwards from the point of view of a free trader. But there's a possibility that we could address some of these, what I consider flaws in implementing legislation that Congress has to pass. And there are some good things. So we've got to study the details.